what's happening out here today?
Well, last year was the 350th anniversary of the arrival of English settlers on Nantucket. And we sort of did a series of things. We weren't entirely satisfied, so we're doing one more. And that is placing a monument today where the first English settlers spent the winter. They arrived in the autumn. There wasn't any time to plant anything, and so they really only survived because the local Wampanoags were good-hearted to them. And this monument commemorates the meeting of the local Wampanoags and the English settlers and their cooperation in those first years. Over there, just a little bit, is the Madaket Ditch, which the English and the Wampanoags dug as a cooperative project in 1665, and it's still there. The town still maintains it.
Is this the spot, though?
This is pretty much where it was, somewhere right around in here. They spent the winter here on Madaket Harbor.
How many people were there?
It was the Macy family, Thomas and Sarah Macy, and their children, a 12-year-old boy named Isaac Coleman, and a recently widowed man named Edward Starbuck, who left his children on the mainland while he came over and reconnoitered. And they spent the winter here. They looked the island over, thought about where it would be good to have homesteads, and then the next spring and summer they went and got more English families to come.
Oh my gosh, that's terrific.
But
Now,
it must have been a really tough winter out here. Can you imagine?
I can't.
We think they probably had a kind of a dugout house, maybe with a sod roof.
Right.
And
then so what happened after that?
more English families came.
Yeah. And did they come to this spot, or did they?
No, they decided, they really came expecting to farm. And what you need for farming is lots of good fresh water. So they chose a place further along the north shore around Wannacomet, where there are lots of freshwater ponds, and they laid out the homesteads there. And at that time, Capon Pond was open to the sea, and it was really big enough for their needs at the time. Obviously, it wasn't big enough for their needs once Nantucket became a whaling port, and then they moved to what they called the Great Harbor.
And how did the Wampanoags treat the settlers back then?
The Wampanoags were very kind to the English settlers. And for the first generation or two, the English settlers learned the Wampanoags language. The Wampanoags learned English, and that's the inscription on the stone is from historian Obed Macy. They became conversant with each other's languages. But after that, things didn't go so well for the Wampanoags. So we can't really celebrate this as a great occasion because it didn't work out very well for the native population.
They got sick?
Eventually, in the winter of 1763-64, there was a brutally selective epidemic that killed 2/3 of the Wampanoags. And there weren't enough left to reconstitute a Wampanoag community. So some moved over into the African community, and others left Nantucket and went, for instance, to the Indian town of Mashpee on the Cape.
I see.
And by the 1850s, the last two people recognized as Wampanoag Indians on Nantucket, Abram Quarry and Dorcas Honorable, died within about 6 weeks of each other.
Yep.
And that was the end of the Nantucket Wampanoags.
Gee. And they had been out here for, do we know how?
Thousands of years.
Thousands of years.
They actually coexisted with the English much longer and much more peacefully than Indians on the mainland. King Philip's War never touched Nantucket. I can't say that.
And they were not a war-driven. And I guess the other tribes in the Northeast really never came over here to try to.
Actually, King Philip did come here to try, apparently, to stir something up. But he didn't succeed. And so things were peaceful, but not certainly satisfactory for the Wampanoags. They really economically lost out to the English. The English population increased exponentially while the Wampanoag population decreased, and then the epidemic was the end of it.
Yeah, that was the end of it. And today it's just commemorating this spot for the English settlers with that stone.
Well, we're commemorating the spot for the English settlers and the native Wampanoags for that moment in history when they came together. And the Macy family is here in force to commemorate their original ancestors.
That's terrific.
Yeah,
All right. Well, thank you so much.
and we do think it's a beautiful monument.